Thank you for tuning in to the Community Spotlight. I'm your host, Tia Harris. Today we have some wonderful information for you. Want to encourage you to go ahead and get your pen and pad ready. It's going to be some awesome information I'm sure you're going to want to take notes on. I do have very special guests in the studio with me. We have Miss Quinn, who's with us from Rising Star Educational Services, and also CORRETTA from FARRAR Credit and Financial Services. So how you guys doing today?
We're great. Glad to be here.
Likewise, we're doing great. Glad to be here as well.
Okay, well, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. You guys are experts in your fields, you with the finances and you with education. Mm-hmm. So let's start with a little bit of financial talk and move into some educational talk that's very important. So with the finances, the first thing I want to touch base on, CORRETTA, is credit. I mean, right now, we've had some devastating times in the nation. A lot of people are laid off. They're trying to rebound. And there's a lot of people with credit issues. And even before then, there were people that still didn't value credit and they were not responsible with their credit. Can you tell us how a person should view their credit and why they should find it important to make sure they keep it up to par?
Absolutely. Your credit is a indicator, believe it or not, of what people see when they see you. It's a part of who you are. And a lot of people say, well, my credit doesn't dictate who I am and my personality. And it doesn't, but it dictates how someone looks at you when you get ready to apply for a home. It looks at how someone views you when you're trying to apply for a mortgage or any of those type of things. And it's very important that all of your life is in line, not just some parts of it. And credit is a big part of people's lives that we overlook so much. But it's such a small indicator of who we are, but it has a huge impact on what we can be. And so it's very important that we take care of our credit just like we take care of our physical bodies. The way we go and get a checkup every year is the same way we should check on our credit every year, making sure that our score is above 640 and higher, making sure that we are doing the proper things to make sure that if anything that's on our credit that's incorrect, that we're fixing it. So it's a huge part of who we are, and it's very important that we stay focused on it so we can keep it up to par.
You know, what's interesting is many people don't think about it until the last minute. But if you want to get a certain job, they're looking at your credit. If you're looking at certain insurance products, they're looking at your credit. So it's very important that we do take this thing seriously because if not, even if you can get credit, if you're in the middle, then you're subject to high interest rates. So talk to me a little bit about that, Quinn, some high interest rates. You want the lower rate or the higher rate?
Well, you always want the lower rates. I've had experience with actually having higher rates. And what tends to happen is you end up paying more for whatever particular item you're getting. For example, you may get a car, but if you have a really high interest rate, you may end up paying double for that car. And in the long run, you end up wasting a lot of money. So like she mentioned before, credit is really important to make sure you keep your credit in line so you can get those lower interest rates so you won't pay as much for items.
Well, the first step is that it's good for everyone to look at their credit. And some
Absolutely.
people say look at it once a year. Some experts say look at it twice a year. Me personally, I have a monitoring service that monitors it every single month.
Yes.
And if any change comes in, good or bad, it lets me know, and I'll go in and I'll check that change. So it's very important that you look at it frequently. So one of the websites they can get it for free is annualcreditreport.com. That's absolutely free. It's no gimmicks with that. That's annualcreditreport.com. But it's a little bit aggravating because you have to log in each time for each bureau, and it's a process to get each credit bureau. But if a person does look at their credit and they see some blemishes or they see some flaws, then what should they do?
Well, I can tell you this. Everybody has a flaw in their credit report. From I never lived at this address to my name is spelled incorrectly to a bill that you have paid off 2 years ago and it's still showing that you owe a balance. So if you see anything that's incorrect on your credit report, it's your responsibility to make sure that you fix it. And you can fix it by a couple ways. The first thing that you want to do is first indicate what the issue is. And then once you do that, most of the time in that annualfreecreditreport.com, it gives you a section in the back that says dispute or update inaccurate information. And you just put in the information that's inaccurate, and then you go through the steps to make sure that you update it properly. But something as simple as your name being spelled incorrectly could be a sign of identity theft. Something as simple as an address that you never lived at is a sign of identity theft, that somebody at another address could be using your information. So it may be something simple in your mind, but it could be a bigger problem that you have not identified, or it could be getting into a bigger problem that you need to identify so you can rectify it.
I'm glad you mentioned identity theft because this thing is definitely on the rise. It's a new crime that people go unpunished for on a consistent basis. I mean, when you're dealing with the police department, they're dealing with some hardcore stuff. They don't feel like this is a serious thing.
Absolutely.
You know, but it can be a serious thing depending on how deep it goes. I know someone whose daughter actually got locked up because someone was able to assume her identity. They did crimes in her name. She was arrested on some serious charges, and it took hell and high water to prove that this was not her. So this is very serious, that people look for this and can continue to monitor their credit report and see the first signs of anything. One thing I want to let folks know, if they've been in that situation, is that they can do the credit freeze, which is a new thing where you could just freeze your report completely. I heard it lowers your credit score a little bit, but if you have that fear, hey, a couple of points, it's not going to hurt. And then whenever you want to take the freeze off and use your credit, you pay $10 and you take it off, and then you put it back on. What other things would you recommend to folks that are in an identity theft situation?
Definitely the freeze. One of the second things is that I recommend for them is to make sure they're have that particular service where they can check their credit report every month, where they can be identified immediately when things happen. The third thing that I would tell people to do is not apply for a lot of things. Whenever you're going through identity crisis, a lot of times people continue to apply. It's kind of, you need to take a break a little bit and assess the damage and go through the proper steps of rectifying it. And then having identity theft protection is very, very important. They have great programs out here that not only help you with identity theft protection, but they help you fight the crime, and they also help you restore yourself back to where you were. And sometimes those fees are $10 or $12 a month through your bank or through other organizations that offer it, but it's worth it, because when you go through identity theft, Fatia, it's not something easy that you can come out of. I work with clients that have been 2, 3, 4, 5 years recipients of identity theft, and it's been, like you said, it's been a life-changing experience, not just for them but for their children. So it's very important.
You have any comments on that, Quinn?
Yes, identity theft, it definitely can. It can really mess up your future, and it's important that people monitor their credit. I know that, like she said before, there are a lot of credit monitoring agencies out there where you can kind of check your credit to make sure nobody is taking your identity, because it can even affect your ability to get jobs too, as well. So it's important to make sure nobody's has information that's yours or identity theft.
And you know, the sad thing about it is, if you're in another state, you actually have to physically, if you don't have one of these services that you're talking about, the service I have will take care of me in any state.
Yes.
But you have to actually physically go to that state to rectify that situation yourself. So, you know, this could actually be a headache. And it's, again, the fastest growing crime. There's several different types of identity theft. So it's very important that you monitor your credit for those purposes. And one thing I want to let people know is, oftentimes it's somebody you know.
Absolutely. Majority of the
Isn't
time
that a shame?
It is.
Yep.
Oftentimes it's somebody you know. And I also want to caution folks not to carry their Social Security card in their wallet.
Yes.
A lot of people do that. Take that out of there. Make sure you hide your birth certificate, you know. Okay, so let's talk about some things that's easy to get off the credit report. Now, that's something you can challenge, a fraudulent activity. But what about people who have collections or charge-offs that are very old?
Oh, yes.
I had one guy say to me one time, for example, I have a repo. It's been on there for about 12 years. How can I get this thing off?
Oh, goodness. Well, first of all, by law, it can't be on there for 12 years. In the state of North Carolina, we have a statute of limitations that anything that's unsecured debt, that's debt that you do not have to put up collateral for, it cannot be on your credit report past 7 years. Now, 7 years is not from the date that you get it, but it's from the date that it went negative, from the date that you stopped paying or you became delinquent on the account. So if you have an issue like that, it's very important that you write a letter to the credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, advising them that according to the law in North Carolina that this debt has been on your credit report for 12 years, the statute of limitation is 7, ask them to investigate it, and most of the time, 95% of the time, Matia, is easily removed just by a letter. 5% of the time, you do have to go back and re-challenge, which can be sometimes a little time consuming, but it's worth the time, especially when you're talking about points. Now, I tell people all the time, believe it or not, something like that that's on your credit that's negatively impacting you, that's reporting every month, is taking 7 to 12 points away from you per month. 7 to 12 points means a lot between a 630 and a 640. Which is a 640 is the minimum score now for you to get a home at a pretty decent interest rate. So I tell people every point counts in credit repair. Every point counts when you're trying to fix your credit. So it's very important that you do those type of things. And it's just as simple as writing a letter saying, investigate this, prove to me that this debt belongs to me, or prove that this debt should still be on my credit report because the time frame is inaccurate.
You know, Ms. Quinn, sometimes you have an issue with credit reports that's duplicates, meaning you might have one account, but you have several different companies reporting it on the credit bureau. All those companies are hitting at your credit score. What do you think about that? Is that fair or not fair?
I don't think it's fair, and I think a lot of times people get confused because they may open the account with one company and then another company is hitting their credit report, and then that debt has been sold elsewhere. And it can be very confusing. That's why it's so important for consumers to kind of keep track of what's going on with the debt and what's going on with the information on their credit report, so they don't have that moment where they're confused as to what's on their credit report.
So how does someone rectify that? Is there a remedy for that?
One of the remedies is that, first of all, things cannot be duplicate on the account. So the remedy, of course, is to go through the disputing phase. If the disputing phase does not work, you can call the actual creditor themselves and say, hi, this information is reporting on here 3 or 4 times. It's reporting from you, it's reporting from X, it's reporting from Y. Which one of you guys have the account? They'll let you know that information. And then the other 2 ones, you can call and ask them to remove that information because it's inaccurate. They don't have it on there. And a lot of times when things get sold to collections, it gets sold to the highest bidder. So I have it, CORRETTA's collection agency has it for a month, and then I sell it to a Tia's collection agency for $2 or $3, but I still keep it on the report because their goal is not to make sure that your report is accurate. Their goal is to collect on that account. It's your goal as a consumer to make sure that your report is accurate, and no one cares more about your credit report than you do. So if you don't take interest in it, it is not a priority to you. It's definitely not a priority to the collection agencies or the creditors.
What would you recommend to an individual, for example, that has an outstanding medical bill? A lot of people don't take medical bills seriously, but now they have this letter stating that since you didn't pay this bill, we want you to come to court.
Yes, and that's happening a lot.
And we
lately.
all know what that's going to turn into, but I'll let you address that. Yes, it's going to turn into a judgment that's going to sit on your credit for at least 10 years. If, you got to clear it up. So when someone gets that letter, how do you think they should react to that?
Well, I tell people all the time, I believe in having an attorney for everything. So my thing is that when you get letters like that, you might want to seek some legal counsel. But the first thing that I tell people to do is, let's talk about it, Tia, how to prevent it from even happening. We know a lot of times we have illness, we have sickness, things happen, we go to the doctor, we see those, they come like clockwork in the mail, those hospital bills. A lot of these hospitals have charity programs and different things that you can get into if you cannot afford to pay the debt before it even gets to collections. But I see it happen a lot now, more than ever, with judgments coming from medical. The main thing that you need to do is, the first thing you need to do is see if you can negotiate to try to pay the debt off. A lot of times if you pay it off before you get to court, the actual court date, they normally won't even place the judgment on your credit report. If you have the money to do that. If you don't, then the best thing for you to do is maybe seek some legal advice to try to see what can be done, because a judgment can take so many points off a person's credit report that is unbelievable. And like you say, you have to deal with that for a couple years, even after you pay it. So my advice would be to seek some type of legal assistance, or try to get to the debt before you get to court to see if you can rectify it before the court date. Because at the end of the day, the only thing they want is their money.
Yep, that's what they want.
And if you can do that, and if you can get to it before you get to court, it's better.
Sometimes they just take a portion of their money.
Absolutely.
But we'll get on that settlement offer in just one moment. But one thing I want to let folks know, you hit on something very key. You need to talk to them who you owe the debt to and say, what are all my options?
Yes.
For example, Carolinas Medical Center has a program called Access One.
Yes.
And I don't really think they fully just flat out tell you about it.
They don't.
Someone had to tell me about it. I had a medical debt there. They said, hey, why don't you have them put you on Access One? They take your medical debt, they pay it off for you, or they put you on some kind of payment plan, and everything's taken care of and it doesn't go on your credit. So I think it is very important that folks actually explore all their options on anything that's outstanding and take these things seriously. And please don't charge up debt that you know that you cannot pay back. Now let's talk about the settlement offer.
All right. The settlement offer is very good, and I tell people that's your negotiation. The best time to settle is a time frame that I've learned throughout working in this industry is the end of the month. The best time to settle is between the 25th and the 30th of the month. First of all, collectors work off of commission. So they are collecting, the more money they collect on, the bigger their commission checks are. You can normally negotiate really quickly and have a better return on your money for that. And pretty much I tell people when they're negotiating, try to go for at least at the minimum 50%. So if you owe a debt that's 5 years old and you owe $250, say, hey, can I settle with you for $150? You know, a lot of times at the end of the day, it's interest, it's fees, and when you settle, people look at settling as a negative, but it's not. Most of the time when you're settling, you're really settling on the amount you actually really owed.
Yeah.
Because the rest of it is just interest and late fees and all of that. So when you talk to people, they're like, I know they say I owe $250, but when I had this JCPenney's card, it was only $150, but when you add in the balance and the late fees and it's been sold to multiple collectors, that money is added upon that. So you're really only getting the balance back to what you actually owed in the first place. You negotiate with that, and when you negotiate, the best negotiation is when you have the money in hand. We're coming up on tax season. It might be a good time to do some negotiation for a lot of people because you have that money in hand. When you have the money in hand, you can get a much better return on the dollar, and then people take you more seriously. And at that point, you can ask for a letter of deletion. If I give you this amount of money in return, will you delete this off of my credit report? 95% of creditors would do it, but they're not going to do it unless you ask for it to happen, especially with medical. Medical is a definite plus.
You have to ask.
They definitely would delete it off your credit report.
Okay, well that's fantastic information. You have any more comments on credit before we move on to education?
You know, a lot of times I've received letters in the mail where they make that settlement offer, and sometimes it's for less than the amount that's owed.
Absolutely.
So that's also a nice deal that people can take advantage of. Don't be scared to pay it off, but at least contact them to see if it's a true offer, to see if they really can make that settlement then and there.
Yeah, I think when you're dealing with those settlements, you need to make sure you have those things in writing. Some companies won't, but you really have to try to really work with them to send it to you on paper before you pay that debt, so you can have these things for your records. But just before education, there's a few financial things you feel folks should have or tools that they should utilize. You want to tell us those real quick?
Absolutely. I think one of the main things that people should utilize is making sure that they pay all their bills on time. It's very important that you stay in front of that you have a budget that you work from, because you don't want to have more month than money. You don't want to be in that position. I tell people all the time, there's two places you don't want to be in. My money is funny and my credit won't get it. You just can't be in those two places at the same time. So it has to be some room there where you can kind of move from one area to the next. So you want to make sure that you're doing that. You also want to make sure that you're not biting off more than you can chew. I tell people it's hard to be the Joneses when you're a Jigget. You can't keep up with the Joneses when your last name is Jigget. Stay in your lane and feel comfortable in your own skin. We're coming up on Christmas time, and this is the time where people's credit get affected the most. We want to go out here and buy all these things and do all of these things. Don't do it, because that's what, after Christmas, those bills are going to start coming in and life comes back to normal. So you can't spend off emotion. But again, use your money as a tool. I tell people all the time, money was given to us for a tool for us to utilize, not for money to use us. And if we can ever get that in our mind and remember that anything in life that's worth having is worth working for. Your credit is something worth working for. And don't let fear, false evidence appearing real, stop you from living the life that you desire and you deserve. So if I had to give any tool, it would be manage your money. Don't let it manage you. Check your credit twice a year, and anything that you want to do in your credit, if you want your credit score to come up, you can do it, but you have to pull it out of you to say, you know what, I'm worth my credit being where it needs to be. I'm worth making sure that my finances are where they need to be, not just for myself, but for generations behind me. And it's very important that we keep that in mind.
I think that's some great advice, and you will save thousands upon thousands, like you were talking about the higher interest rate over a lifetime.
Over a lifetime.
Just make an effort to keep that under control.
Absolutely.
All right, so Miss Quinn, our educator in the house, how you doing today?
I'm good.
That's excellent. You want to give them a little bit of your background in education?
Sure. Well, I taught high school English for about 3 years. Well, first of all, I always wanted to become a teacher. And I taught high school English for about 3 years, and then I have some experience actually tutoring students on the elementary level, working with a couple of tutoring companies. And eventually I got to the point where I wanted to tutor. I really enjoy that one-on-one interaction with students, because it's so much fun to me to see that light bulb go off on the student's head. Classroom was fun for me, but I really wanted to make an impact directly with students, so that's when I decided to start tutoring.
I think it's very important that you're here today, and CORRETTA is going to join the discussion with us as well, because right now in the United States as a whole, compared to the world, our education is not cutting the mustard. We've known this for several years now. New statistics recently came out, and we're kind of down at the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to that. So I want to talk about the tutoring aspect of it, but I also want to talk about people that want to beef up and enhance the knowledge base of their children and things they should do. But let's talk about tutoring first. Sometimes we have children that are having difficulty in a particular subject. Maybe it's because the classrooms are oversized, or what reasons you think?
Well, a lot of times, a lot of parents believe, like we always have the discussion, that your child only needs tutoring when they're struggling. That is a time when they do need tutoring, when maybe they're falling behind in a course, or maybe you realize your child is getting lazy in a course. But you also need tutoring for a child that maybe you want to challenge a little bit more. You have a lot of students who are really intelligent. They may have 3.5 GPAs, but they may need that extra push. So tutoring can be used in a couple of variety of ways, but it gives that child that one-on-one individualized attention with an educator, so that they can get what maybe they're missing in the classroom, or to give them that extra push that they need to move forward.
So how do you get your clientele? Do people just flock to you with your background? Or?
Most of the time they do. Most of the time I don't have difficulties during the school year as far as gaining clients, because a lot of parents realize, especially around report card time, that their child needs that little bit of extra support. And, you know, like I tell parents, making that sacrifice is sometimes really important, because it's a small sacrifice that you make to give your child that tutoring today that will pay out dividends in the future for your child. So to get them to make that investment in tutoring right now is really important.
All right, so we have EOGs getting ready to come up. They're right around the corner. What advice would you give parents in regards to that?
Well, I would let parents know to make sure that your child has an area in the home where they can actually study, because I know a lot of times the teachers will send home information and study tests that the students can use. So I would tell the parent to make sure your child has somewhere where they can sit and study quietly in the home. Another word of advice is to turn off the TV every now and then. Turn off the video games.
Do you do that? Do you do that, CORRETTA, with your children?
Yes.
We don't have video games, or we do with no computer time besides computer for homework during the weekdays. So we find it very important to do that and just keep them engaged. So that's very important, to be able to keep them engaged and get that focus level there. And also it kind of stimulates some family time too around it. You know, spending time doing homework together. It's more than just a homework, but it does some. I see a lot of bonding happening in our home doing homework time, and we could conversate about what happens during the day. So it's very fundamental on both levels for me as a mother to be able to do that.
I'm glad you mentioned homework time, because oftentimes, I mean, parents are busy. You think about the single family household right now at the present time, where you might have one person that's trying to do it all. What kind of advice would you give that individual? I mean, they're tired, they know they have to help their child with the homework, but they just don't have it in them. What advice would you give them?
Well, I tell parents a lot of times, if you're in that particular situation, and I know a lot of parents, they don't have that time, or they may be actually struggling with the content and the homework that their child is bringing home. So my advice is, if you need extra support, extra help, always ask that child's teacher first. Be in constant communication with the teacher, by phone number, by email, but be in constant contact with the teacher. Also, the internet is a great resource for parents to use. YouTube has a massive amount of videos on any subject that you need. If you need help with, okay, how do I simplify a fraction? You type in simplifying fractions in YouTube, and you'll instantly get that information. So it's a vast amount of resources, and also tutoring as well, that are available for parents to use if they're struggling with helping their child with homework.
I know they have like educational websites also, like with my daughter's schools, they give us websites where the kids can go on there and play games.
They do.
What you think about games as a way of learning,
I think that's really good. Games are really, we use ABC Mickey Mouse or ABC Mouse, and my son goes on that. We have Hooked on Phonics, and he utilizes that. One of the things that helps us, because we're busy as business owners, is we bought my son books that he can press the button and it teaches him the word. So we don't have to be there physically with him to read, but if he doesn't know how to pronounce that word, he can click on the bottom of it, and, and it tells him the word. So we buy toys like that that are able to interact, and we can hear him as he's reading, but it doesn't require us sometimes to be physically right there with him, but it's still getting the same point across. So I think it's some different ways. We have to be creative, but definitely single parents can find different creative ways that can help them with education. It makes it a lot easier when you can have those type of tools available.
So my question is, considering what I talked about early on, if you want your child to be a global competitor in the world, education-wise, would you guys recommend you utilize all these tools, and is there anything else you can add on top of that? What's your recommendation?
Of course, I definitely think that they should use all those tools. Work with the school, work with the teachers, check out the internet, just really be involved. I think the more parents are involved in education, the more involved they are in their child's education, the more they'll understand why their child needs to be a global competitor, why their child needs to be able to compete with somebody from maybe China. But if they're more involved, and that's just simply being involved, could be calling the teacher, emailing the teacher, showing up for lunch, showing up for a classroom observation, just a quick visit, are ways that parents can get involved to lead their child to that global competing with other students across the country.
I'm glad you said classroom observation. I think every parent should try to pop in every now and again if you have to change your schedule up at work. And especially if you have a child that might be having issues with work, like you said, that may need tutoring in the school. I mean, it doesn't mean that child's not smart. You might need to identify what's going on with that child. Sometimes they're young and they have something silly going on in their head. Like, for example, my daughter, the teacher said, your daughter's the last one to finish her test. And I know she's highly intelligent. I have that proven. I'm like, what's going on with you, my dear? Well, I wanted to finish after that kid. And I have to say, no, You don't do that. You finish as fast as you can finish. So it's very good that you go in there, observe, find out what's going on with your child to help make sure that you're meeting their educational needs. And if they're slacking off, it might be a silly reason, especially if they're young. My daughter's 7, for example, why they're slacking off, and you need to step in and correct them immediately and get that thing under control. And that's one reason why tutoring is important too, you know, to help them catch that slack up as well. And then again, like you said, if you do have a child that's gifted or you want to challenge them, you need to enhance what they're learning. So it's almost like an extra class.
It is almost like an extra class, exactly.
Okay, but is it a fun class? You're like everybody's mama. I don't know.
Of course it's fun. You know, with tutoring, the great thing about tutoring is tutoring can be a little bit different from the classroom. With tutoring, you can have educational games, and you can use computers, and you can use other things to make it fun. So tutoring is not just worksheets and pen and pencil, but it can actually be a fun environment that's created so the child can learn with whatever learning style they have. You know, a lot of students are really creative learners. They can draw learning, or some students are pen and paper, but tutoring gives them that fun way to learn outside the classroom.
So what if a parent has a low budget? Hey, I want my child to take advantage of this. I can't afford the LeapPad 2 right now at the present time. You know, I can't afford this book where you press and it says the words. I know that's got to cost a lot of money just by you saying that. It's saying the word.
Yeah.
Okay, so what affordable ways can a parent still make sure that their child is competitive?
Well, Target and the Dollar General and Dollar Tree, I've learned, have a lot of educational books. Dollar Tree has books for about $1, and every now and then Target will have books like that available where they're really inexpensive. And also you can check out Walmart, but like I said, the internet has a lot of free resources that are available too as well, where a parent does not have to spend a lot of money and they can still get those resources. Also, if you email the teacher, she may actually be able to email you a website or packets of worksheets that you can use as extra support at home to help your child learn certain skills that they're struggling with.
So, Corretta, what affordable things have you gotten for your child?
I definitely have been to Dollar Tree. My son, this year, he's in 1st grade, and we had some issues with reading. He did really great in kindergarten, but it's something about 1st grade for him that was very difficult. And so I found that we were going and just the sounding out of words and then learning how to add, you know, like add and subtract numbers, like getting and counting and making sure that that's not off key. So we went and got blocks from Dollar Tree. We went and got worksheets from Dollar Tree that actually resemble the classwork that he's given in the classroom. And his teacher, it was not his teacher, but it was his curriculum coach. Each level, 1st through 3rd grade, have a curriculum coach, and on curriculum night they gave us a lot of free resources that were able to help us. So that's what we do. And then of course we do internet. Internet has a lot of great things on there. Nick Jr. and like I said, it's ABC, Mickey Mouse House. All of those things are free, and you go online and they're able to read and do all those things. So those are the things we've been doing.
I think the library is a good resource also.
Absolutely.
We have some awesome libraries
We do.
In this particular area with the resources.
Definitely.
You'd be amazed at the software programs that they have
Yes.
and different things. I mean, they've got the internet. They've got all kind of things for those children. What about video? DVDs? What you think?
Video and DVDs can work as long as they're educational. I know maybe the library may have educational videos and DVDs available, and the internet may as well. I definitely think those are good tools that parents can use as long as they're educational friendly, as long as that child is learning something in the process of watching it.
Absolutely.
Well, I want to thank you guys for coming out to the program today. I want to
Thank
get
you.
some final food for thought from each of you. We'll start with you, Corretta. Give us a final good word, and then you, Miss Quinn.
All right. Well, one of the final thoughts that I have is we have 21 days left in this year before we go into 2014. And so I think that the huge thing is to make sure that you are putting things, sowing seeds right now that can impact your future for tomorrow. And no matter how we look at it or how to spend it, finances and credit is one of the most important things that has a huge impact on our life. And we have to take it seriously, and we have to take the steps individually to say, you know what, I want better, I'm going to do better, I'm going to be better. And how do I be better? How do I do better? How do I become better? Is that I have to start changing how I do things and changing my life one step at a time.
And my final thought for parents is to make sure that they understand that when you make an investment in tutoring or you make an investment in your child's education, that it pays off in the long run, and to always make sure you have your child prepared for the future.
You've been tuning into the Community Spotlight. Thank you so much.